Hi, everyone. Thanks again for joining us. For those of you who just joined, welcome to our show. What we'll be talking about today is this crucial topic, UX portfolio secrets for landing your first UX role. And we have invited an awesome guest who is a seasoned UX professional and has lots of experience in the field and has hired people, helped lots of people, mentored a lot of people as well, and we'll share lots of insights on this important topic with you and answer questions. We'll introduce our wonderful guest in just a few minutes. For those of you joining us for the first time, my name is Michael, and I'm the founder of a company called BeginX. We help people who know UX basics and want to transition into UX. Our program is a part-time UX career accelerator with real mission-driven client projects that provides a guaranteed way to become highly marketable and land a UX role. And unlike most traditional boot camps or career programs, we allow our participants to build real experience, strong real client portfolio, crucial soft skills like UX team collaboration, client and stakeholder management and presentation, and master the UX job search and interviewing necessary to land a UX role. And all in a collaborative and fun environment and under the guidance of industry practitioner mentors from top companies. And we'll tell you more about this at the end of the event as well. I do not mean this to brag or anything like that, but just to give you a bit more background for credibility purposes. The company is headquartered in New York City, and we have run many virtual cohorts and helped over 160 people or so get hired into UX roles. And again, we'll tell you a bit more about our virtual program and also make a special announcement closer to the end of the event. And of course, that part is completely optional for you. All right. Here are some companies that the grads were hired by, who I just mentioned. So we've basically seen a lot of people go through this entire UX career transition journey from start to finish. So now let's get to the most fun part and introduce our awesome guest speaker. And then she'll do a quick talk, and then we'll go through the interview with her as well. So Frankie, it is so great to have you here. Thanks again for joining us. Really excited to have you for this discussion and basically have this discussion with you because I know you're pretty much an expert on this and have been a content creator for quite some time and helped and mentored a lot of people. So really great to have you here. Would you like to briefly introduce yourself to our audience?
Sure. Happy to do that. First off, thanks for having me. Super excited to be here. Especially excited to talk about portfolios since any of you have seen my content or know me, I love to talk about them. So this will be a fun one for me. So appreciate the invite. So who am I? That's a great question. I guess I'll keep it short and sweet. I'm obviously Frankie. I'm a senior UX designer and a content creator. Basically just love being able to share tips and tricks to all of you to try and give back to the space, to the industry, to try and help out. Since I love this space and I love spending so much time in it. So all I want to do is really share as much as I can. I'm not really sure how much you want me to give.
All right. Awesome. I mean, as much as you want. I mean, as long as it's not for the whole hour. But I know you have an awesome talk prepared, so we'll start things off with that and then dive into the actual interview.
Sounds like a plan. All right. See if I can do this again correctly since I'm so used to Teams. All righty. Let me share my screen. Okay. Can everyone see my presentation?
Yep.
All righty. Perfect. Okay. I can still see me. Perfect. All righty. I think we're good to go. So as Michael said, we're going to be talking about UX portfolios, specifically some secrets to land your first role. So I'm sure a lot of you have seen online or elsewhere, however you get your content, that you've seen so many pieces and tidbits about portfolios, what to do, what not to do, the magic. And I feel like a lot of times, there's the same couple things being said over and over again. It's a lot of the same information. And so, over my time in the space and in this industry, I've kind of noticed what works, what doesn't work. I've tried a lot of pieces. And so what I really wanted to do tonight was talk through four different tips or secrets, if you will, that I personally have found really helpful that I think are actually beneficial, but not talked about enough. So I'm hoping tonight, at least one of these you won't have heard of, if not more, to really just help give you some insights into ways to elevate your case studies in your portfolio to help you really land that role. So first off, why does this talk matter? So at the end of the day, yes, a portfolio helps get the job done and it helps you get the job, but it really just gets your foot in the door. It gets you into the room. Because if you think about it, at the end of the day, it's, it is a very important piece. Michael, please don't come at me for this. But it's, one part of the puzzle. It's really that, first impression, that entry point. And so that's why it's important. But, it's not the put all your eggs in one basket. And the reason I say that and why I say it's not, everything, because I feel like too often I've noticed that individuals make it like so important that they're almost trying to show off way too much. And I think it takes it to the other extreme where it honestly kind of hurts them. It gives them a disadvantage just because it doesn't look good. There's too much at once. It's overwhelming. And so, I want us to, for tonight, rein back a little bit, pull it in and say, okay, it's important, but there's other pieces. And if I try not to go too showy, it actually will help me. So my goal is with these four secrets to, take us to the opposite extreme of that and have us, elevate our portfolios, create better ones that actually do help you, so that you feel confident, you feel strong enough and, are happy with it, so that it can help you land that role. All right. So secret number one, showcase a moment of real challenge, not just clean process steps. So let's see if we can do this. I'm not quite sure if I can get hands here, but I'm curious to see how many of you are currently working in the space versus, a week or so into the industry. Raise your hand if you're, a week in. Is that possible?
I think
I
you
don't
can
know.
just ask people to answer in the chat. So maybe just use like one or two. I'm not sure if there's like a poll feature somewhere, then if it's available, but maybe what you can say is just like if it's the first option, then put one in the chat. If it's the second, then put two.
All right. Well, I am curious to see, but I can't actually access the chat right now, so do not worry. I was just curious to make a point to say that basically, for those of you who have worked in the industry, even, probably a month or less, I feel like you've probably started to notice that a lot of times the projects that you work on are not a completely perfect dynamic. No matter how hard you try, no matter how skilled you are, things always go in different manners just because of external factors that play a role. And that's not to, take a knack at my abilities or yours or anyone here. It's just the fact that there's so many things outside of our control that will play a role with all of this. And so, that's where I want us to think about for a second and realize that a lot of times, if not all of the times, you're not going to have that perfect story. You're not going to have that perfect, I started here, I ended here, and everything went as planned. And the reason I call this out when I'm talking about portfolios is because that messy bit is actually where a lot of the good meat and bones comes from. That's where the juicy stuff comes in. And I feel like a lot of times, especially when individuals are just starting out, they want to create this clean cut, pretty portfolio, especially in terms of the case study. And I think that because of that, it ultimately leads to information being left out because it's too clean. And so what I would encourage you to think about is how do you add in that messiness? I'm not saying your case study should be messy, but how do you add in that extra like oomph, if you will, to talk about, where did you disagree with someone in the sense of maybe based on research, you wanted it to go one way, but ultimately a stakeholder decided something else. Um, you know, Talk about that challenge. Talk about why you believed the way you did. Talk about where your answer came from. Pull that data in because ultimately what this does is it shows you it shows your reader rather, really how you think and how you think through a project. And ultimately that's what a portfolio is trying to do. And so I would really encourage all of you to think about how to really add in the extra pieces so that it's not as that checklist, that A to Z. It's that here's all that good stuff. Here's the meat and the bones so that we can really, those reading your portfolio can get a better idea of actually how you think and what they would see if they were tired. Secret number 2, connect the dots, don't just drop artifacts. So I started to get into this one a little bit with the last secret, but the big thing here is thinking about trying to add storytelling into your portfolio and creating something that feels engaging and that's interesting rather than something that is ultimately just a list of deliverables. I don't know if any of you have heard of the term, but for a while there was a term circulating called a checklist designer. And ultimately, what that was someone who just basically put deliverable, deliverable, deliverable. There was no connection between each one, there was no story. It was just a list like a grocery list. And so again, I can't see the chat. I've lost it in this moment, but I am curious just for all of you to think about the last conversation any of you had with someone. How many of you remember that conversation in terms of what it was about? My guess is the ones of you have said yes, and the ones that, started to replay that conversation in your head, the reason had nothing to do with the actual conversation. Rather, it actually had to do with the fact of how they were telling you the story, because they were doing it in a way that, brought in elements of storytelling. Maybe it didn't feel like a fairy tale when you were, a little kid, and that in that kind of, structural storytelling, but it at least had some of the elements. And so, you might be wondering, why am I talking about your last conversation if we're here for portfolios? The reason being is they ultimately relate to the same thing, because the end of the day, it's same, but different. Because when someone is reading your case studies, they still want that piece of that engagement, that storytelling, the pieces that connect the dots so that they ultimately remember you at the end of the day. Because again, if we go back to our theme and our goal of a portfolio, it's the fact that you're really trying to get that job and be memorable. And so by connecting the dots, by adding in that story, by making things more interesting, by saying statements like, here's what I was trying to learn, rather than I did interviews, you're giving more of that intrigue. And so really what you then do is you help yourself be memorable, and you're adding more of that kind of juice and meat to your actual case studies. So secret number 3, treat the portfolio as a product. So honestly, this one is probably my favorite one of all of them. And it's the one that I'm actually surprised never really gets talked about. Because to me, it makes so much sense. Because if we think about it, a portfolio really is no different than a product we've ever worked on, in the sense that you know who your personas are, your hiring managers. You know what the goals and the objectives of the project are. You're, trying to get a job, which is the end objective. Your goal was to get them to read through this and understand how you think, what your processes are. And so it really isn't that different. Obviously, the way that you do it will be slightly different. It may not be as in the same kind of structure, if you will. It may not be as, structured, but it's the same kind of principles that you want to think through. You want to still test, you want to iterate, and you want to ship. So if we talk about the testing step, so some ways to potentially test your portfolio, it can be guerrilla style, aka like very laid back, nothing too organized, if you will. It can be as simple as asking 3 friends or mentors or family members, whoever you're comfortable asking, just to have them go through and click through the flows. Do a test of, does the flow make sense? Do you want to click on this button to get to this screen? Or did you think to click here versus there? Whatever the options are, whatever the data ends up being, at least you get that data. So that just like in any UX project or product you work on, you're getting that information to back yourself up so that you can say, I didn't just go in blind and design for myself. I'm actually designing for individuals who are going to be interacting with this. The same is true for, thinking about analytical tools or analytics tools rather. For me, one example that I've done is I've hooked my portfolio up to Hotjar. Just one example. I just like it. But what's helpful about it is it allows me to then see where are people clicking, what is the heat map of my actual sites. And so for me, that's been helpful. It's a way to get that data. And so This is why I think it is actually really important to be able to think through the same mindset, even if it is kind of more low key. At least you're testing, you're iterating, and you're shipping. It's that kind of that goal, so that you're ultimately creating something that, you know, isn't just for you, it's for others, and that it works. Secret number 4, which is add a what I do differently section. So I think this is really important because it shows growth, reflection, and humility, which really is not a weakness. I know that, there's been some debate over that, but it is not a weakness, especially in UX. I think a huge piece of the hiring process is understanding and, that excitement of wanting to learn, wanting to grow. Not only is it, the good for hiring managers because they see that piece. A lot of companies want that because it allows them to say, oh, they're willing to grow, they're willing to learn, but they're also adaptable because every company will be very different in the way that, the teams work, their processes. You know, there's overlap, but they're all quite different. And so showing that piece, I think, is really important. And I know it's something that a lot of hiring managers look for. So this can be, ways to do this is maybe it's something that goes back to the original tip of you want to do this differently. This could be an opportunity for you to talk through what would have happened, had XYZ circumstance not happened. This could be, maybe you're writing your portfolio and your case studies rather, excuse me, a month or two later after you did the project and you've since learned something new. And so maybe this new skill set could have been really helpful then. So this is your chance to say, actually, had I known this then, I would have done this, this, or this. And so again, it's that growth mindset. It's that way to show that you're actually adaptable and that you're really trying to, keep evolving and growing in your career and your processes. And then the other reason why this is super important, I don't really want to get into, the whole rabbit hole of this topic, but AI. I'll keep it short and sweet because, that can be a whole other talk. But with the world where we're at with AI and all of, all of the magic that it has and all of the, places that it's, interwoven into now, even more so now than ever, I think it's so important to really highlight and show that you actually are human. That sounds kind of crazy to say out loud, but it really is true to show that like there's a human, there's a face behind this portfolio, behind these case studies. And so, that's just another thing that I really, think goes a really long way these days. And then lastly, I want to close out with this portfolio checklist and a list of these 4 questions for all of you. If I was you, I would definitely screenshot this screen if you haven't been already. Since this one here is really a list of questions that I would highly, highly, highly recommend all of you, go home and ask yourself while looking at your portfolio. So sorry, but here's a little bit of homework. Take it with what you will. But my goal being that I think these questions will really help you think through these 4 secrets in a way that will, connect the dots and be a starting point for you to say, okay, let me, ask myself these questions so that I can think through how this can then be changed so that I can advance my portfolio and ultimately, and, help myself out so that it's stronger, so that, fingers crossed, you can get that dream job of yours, or at least land that first role. With that being said, I'm going to close out here so that we can start a Q&A and get into the actual, conversation. But thank you all for letting me, share my tips with you. I hope they were helpful. Definitely feel free to be connected. Those are my main links on the screen, as well as my QR code for LinkedIn. Tried to make it easy as possible. So would love to connect. Feel free to reach out there. But yeah, I'll turn it back over to you, Michael.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Frankie. So that was awesome. That was great. Short and sweet and to the point and insightful. I appreciate it. So let's jump into the discussion. I already see quite a few questions coming up here, which is amazing. Keep those coming. Please remember to use that magical Q&A tab. This way you can also upload others and then we can kind of keep that. That's where we'll be taking the questions from. And you might see Mika in the chat reminding you to put questions in Q&A if you put those in the chat. All right. And yeah, so basically I just reminded you about the Q&A tab. So yeah, and just make sure you upvote others' questions as well. So review those. Again, this way we address the ones that you guys are most interested in. And also, please try to ensure that the questions are actually related to the topic, right? So this will help make sure everyone is, can benefit from the question as well. All right, and just a reminder, so we'll make a special announcement about the program we're running closer to the end of the event, and we'll also share the career transition roadmap summary handout with a few slides there, basically. So stick around if you would like to get that. All right, Frankie, so I'd love to ask you, I know you gave quite a few tips or revealed some secrets. So if you could have maybe 3 more, maybe 2 more, what would those be, you think?
A tough one. I feel like I talk about this one a lot and it feels simple, but I see this not done so often that I'm going to call this one out. So the first one I'll say is that make it very clear what your role is on your landing page. And I think there was a question that's kind of related to a little bit in the Q&A actually, but make it really clear and I'm talking like 1 to 2 seconds. Because if we think about who our persona is, if we think about our hiring managers, right? With the tip I was talking about where we're creating this like any UX project that we work on. If we're thinking about the persona of a hiring manager, they're scanning, they're skimming the information in essence. They don't have time. They would, on average, 10 to 60 seconds, I feel is the sweet spot that I constantly hear. And so if we think about that, we want to make sure that you're instantly then giving them an idea of, okay, I'm a UX generalist, I'm a researcher, I'm a this, I'm a that, whatever you are, make it really quick and easy to read. Not just like, so thinking about finding it easily, meaning the hierarchy, making it stand out, however you want to do that with visuals. That's number one is just making it super, super clear because too often I feel like there's this hierarchy issue of your name being front and center and being big and like UX or whatever you're calling yourself is like this big in the corner. And so it's just really hard to tell. So I would say that's definitely a big one. And then another one would be, um, tough question. There's like so many options I could go with that I'm trying to just land on one. But I'd probably go with um having a good ratio of visuals to text. Because I feel like a lot of times it's usually either like a lot of words with like 1 or 2 visuals or just full visuals and like no words. And I think the sweet spot is kind of middle ground between the two. And, being able to think through having I'm debating if I get into this topic, but having a sandwich for each one of your deliverables where you ultimately have your intro, your deliverable, aka your visual, and your takeaways. And so that way it allows you to have a visual in essence per deliverable or a visual of some sort per deliverable. And because this way it splits that text up, it makes it more scannable, it makes it easier to digest, and it just ultimately makes it easier to read everything so that you're really, again, thinking about who your persona is. So I would say that's the other one is creating that kind of Goldilocks dynamic of visuals to text.
Awesome. All right, thank you, Frankie. So I see quite a few questions in Q&A already. Amazing. So I see Sabrina, Jada, Haley, and by the way, if I mispronounce anyone's name, sorry, of course, not intentional. Rocio, Isha, Radhika, Stefano, so thank you. Yeah, we'll try to address all those questions or as many as possible. So we'll go through the interview a little bit first, and then we'll kind of inject some of the questions as well, and then have a more dedicated Q&A session at the end as well. So Frankie, in addition to what you mentioned, in your opinion, what do you think are the top 3 key portfolio mistakes?
Hmm. I feel like I just said one of them, to be honest. But
Let's do 2.
I know, I'm like, let's not repeat. Biggest portfolio mistakes, I think, is not giving a clear idea of actually what you worked on. And what I mean by this is that I've seen too often where, as you write your case studies, you're clearly in the know. You understand what happened because you were there. When, you, me, anyone else was not there. And so trying to actually go through it, the case study, and figure out like what you did, I think is becoming, I've seen way too often, and it's really hard to figure that out. Where that could be because there's not enough text. That could be because there's too many visuals. That could be just because you've just kind of put in a bunch of deliverables and haven't thought through the narrative. And so I think that's a big one, is just trying to make sure that someone who's reading this for the first time can actually understand how you think and your thought processes and what you actually did. That's number one. Number two is, actually, I can give you three. Number two is not having a clear personal brand. So, or I guess these two connect a bit, but I would say a big mistake is not having that personal brand because, again, you're trying to stand out. And if you're just going to follow along with a basic template that everyone else is using, that's not going to help you, I'm sorry to say. So making sure you have that strong visual identity, or that even, I would say visual actually, because we're designers, but a strong visual identity that allows you to quickly at a glance look different than the person next to you, that will make you memorable, that just looks honestly different, so that if someone is, looking at multiple, it catches their attention. So this connects to the next one of, I highly recommend, don't just use white backgrounds everywhere, because that's what everyone does. It looks too templated. It looks too simple. And, we are designers. So, showcase that, show your skills. Even if you're not a brand designer, even if you're, don't have those skill sets, I promise you, you can do, the branding of your portfolio. If you want a quick little way to have a nice, like fun way to get a brand, my favorite way to do it is to ask friends, family, whoever I trust, a list of words, and like a list of adjectives, words that describe me and my character, who I am, things like that. Compile anyone you've asked, compile all of them together in one list. And then Google the psychology of colors, and then connect the dots between the words of the meanings of the colors to the words on your list. And this way you can easily create that palette as a way that represents you. That's what I did with my slides. That's what I've done with all of my brand. I've used colors that represent words that mean things about me. And so it took off the pressure of, oh my God, what color do I do? Do I do things I like? Do I do things, all of that crazy, the buzz in our heads. And it adds a nice little story to it to help kind of say, hey, this really does represent. I don't know. I thought it was a fun little way to do it. Curious if any of you try it. Definitely hit me up if you do. I would love to hear kind of those stories.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, Frankie. All right. So let me ask you this question, and then I want to take Sabrina's question quickly, and then a few others as well. And yeah, please keep those questions coming. Again, just try to focus them on portfolio at first. And then if we run out of portfolio questions, then we might take some additional ones, non-portfolio focused later. But to ensure we use everyone's time effectively and it's relevant to everyone, we'll try to focus on portfolio and case studies. So Frankie, in addition to what you may have mentioned before, maybe could you tell a bit more on who you should be designing your portfolio for?
Totally. No, that's a great question. I think at the end of the day, you want to definitely be designing for hiring managers, because really you're creating a portfolio to get a job. You're trying to get the eyes from those individuals. So by designing for them, I think the pieces at play that need to be thought through is, what are their goals? What are their objectives? What are their needs? Hopefully you've all heard those questions before, because I'm just creating a persona. And so what you really need to figure out is, okay, their needs. They're, trying to read through these quickly. They're looking at a bunch at once. They need to get a clear, quick idea of who you are. What are your skill sets? What role are you trying to, hire for, or fill for rather? Things like this. You want to think through, their goals. Okay, they need to see these pieces. They need to do it quickly. And so by understanding all of that, it allows you to then, design for scannability, design for someone who, needs to see things super, super quickly, which I think really just kind of correlates to making sure you have strong hierarchy, because that's really what allows someone to quickly grasp at all the different pieces that they need to see while jumping around and jumping from section to section. So I would say for sure, hiring managers or individuals who are, or even recruiters, actually. That's the other one.
Okay, okay, awesome. All right, so Sabrina is asking, so we'll jump into case studies as well. We'll cover case studies in a bit more depth in a bit as well. So Sabrina is asking, is a case study that didn't have much challenge or struggle still worth including?
I hate my answer. I'm about to say it depends, the typical UX answer. But the reason I say it depends is I think that it comes down to what did you learn from this, if anything? I would say if there was any form of like learnings, something that like one even small skill set that you learned from it, or something that inspired you in a different way, that could also be a good reason to put it on there. I think it really comes down to like, what are the takeaways? If you didn't really have much of a challenge or a struggle, but it's still a project you're really proud of, it's something you still worked hard on and you want eyes on it, I don't see why not, as long as it's still showcasing certain skill sets. And those could just be visual skill sets potentially. Maybe you have more research heavy projects on your portfolio, and this is the one visual one. Even if it wasn't, a struggle where it wasn't a challenge, it still highlights different pieces of your story. And I think that would be okay. I think if it's just another one to fill a slot, where it doesn't really give much, it doesn't really doesn't really provide any help really, then I would really encourage you not to, and say get something stronger because really you only want to put your best foot forward. So, hate to say it depends, but it really is going to be dependent on that. I'm curious, Michael, your answer though. Putting you on the spot now.
All right, you're flipping it the other way around,
Mhm.
right? I say I mean, I like to advise to just follow I mean, I was gonna say the same thing.
See, it just comes out. We've been in this field for too long. Everything is it
Yeah, yeah,
depends.
I'm saying, yeah, it depends on what else you have, right? If you have strong case studies, so we usually recommend having at least 3 case studies and having 2 of them with real clients, right? So if you have that, right, you should be in pretty good shape. Usually you can have a little more, a few more even. Um, so I would just ensure that you follow the tips that I went over earlier, right? And basically ensure that it's more end-to-end, or at least it covers a few phases, right? It's a strong case study, and you're not only showcasing your hypothetical work, because right now it has been that way for quite some time, and right now the market is even tougher, right? So it's important to have real stuff. I know, of course, we're biased, right? Because we help you build out a real client portfolio in our program. But we're doing that for a reason, right? Because it's a big need and it's very important. All right. So yeah, I would say it's not about the challenge, just the challenge of the struggle, but having like a checklist, right? And of your key competencies, of the things you want to include, like comprehensive case studies with a real client. Did you manage stakeholders? Did you work with clients? Is it comprehensive? Did you interact with clients and, throughout the process, right? So I would focus a bit more on that, right? And if you don't have a lot of that stuff, right, then you just put something that you have, right? So it's basically you lower or higher, like you make your bar lower or higher, right? So depending on your situation. So that's like a long it depends answer with more,
And I
with
had one
more,
other piece to it.
yeah.
As you're talking, one other piece came to mind. The other reason why it might be helpful, again, depending on situation, is if if it was a different device size or a different type of product you built for. So if all of your existing case studies are only desktop and this was a mobile app, honestly, it actually could be helpful because again, it goes back to you're showcasing a different skill set. So that's just another mindset to think through it with, of if it's designing for a different product that you haven't already, great. That's just making you a stronger, showing more of your skills and showing you have a wider net. So that's the other way to kind of think through that one.
Okay, okay, cool. So here's what I also wanted to ask you. maybe if we talk a little bit more of about the needs of your target portfolio user, right? Or that hiring manager or recruiter that you're designing for. Um, do you want to expand on that a little bit? Maybe if you could, and like, how do you identify those needs?
Mhm. I'm thinking through the question. Um,
Like, or maybe like, what do you think those needs are, right? If we talk about the recruiter or the hiring manager, and maybe if you're less familiar with this, like with their needs, how do you find out? Like, how do you go thinking about this?
yeah, no, it's a great question. I'm gonna split it into two. I feel like that's where my head's going is let's talk about the difference between like recruiters and hiring managers, and then talking about like how do you find that information if you don't have it. So, and if I forget, please remind me. So I would say the difference there is that stereotyping, so please no one come at me. Stereotyping, hiring managers may understand the industry a little better than recruiters do. Not always. You do get some recruiters sometimes that actually are really good and understand what they're recruiting for. Other times that may not be the case. And so I think that can also be the difference of making sure that your portfolio is designed for individuals who are in the weeds of the industry and individuals who are just kind of on the outskirts of it. So making sure that, again, it's just thinking through those personas of who's actually going to be, paying attention to this. Um, Thinking through like individuals that have the in-depth time and the individuals who, are literally the scanning ones. So I would say that's kind of the big piece there for but kind of the difference there. In terms of part two of how do you get that information? Um, I mean, thinking through what their goal is. So their goal is to hire you. Their goal is to understand your personality. Are you a culture fit? Are you a talent fit? So I think, just generally thinking through it that way. And then in terms of maybe more specifically from like role to role, I think it comes down to understanding the role itself that's open, looking into what are the specifics that they might be looking for this one job versus another. Um, Another way to try and get that information, if you can, is networking and trying to reach out to, designers on that team to understand more about the ins and outs of the team, understand the ins and outs of the role, so that then you have more ideas going into it, so that you then kind of can like backwards give yourself the data to then understand what that hiring manager or recruiter could be looking. Would you do something similar, Michael?
Yeah, I mean no, that was good. That was good. I think yeah, that was great. So I want to take one more question from Q&A and then come back to our discussion because we have quite a few more, right? So I want to make sure we get through um, as many as possible. And so Stefano is asking, related to I think it's related to what you were talking about earlier. So related to the clear role, I love UX research, but also UX design. Should I split my 4 case studies, 2 for each kind of project, or would it be better to laser focus on just one type to get a job faster? Is UX research plus design equals UX design generalist?
Great question. I'm gonna answer the last one first, and then I will get into detail. I promise, Stefano. Yes. Being a generalist means that you do end to end. So you do a bit of research, you do a bit of design, that you're able to really think through kind of start to finish. And in my opinion, I actually think it's really important to be a generalist when you're starting out. The reason being is twofold. One, I worry that you niche yourself too early and that you don't have a big enough foundation or a broad enough foundation to then get into that niche so that if you then need to do something else, you end up kind of stuck in that section. And two, I also think it just makes you a stronger UX designer. Even if research isn't your forte or design isn't your forte and you want to go more the research role, I think being able to, understand the basics to be able to then talk that language if you will, kind of in the future, it gives you a better foundation. I think it really sets you up for stronger success if you have a bit of both. So, with that being said, though, in terms of your actual question, um, I think the number will kind of come back to the question we talked about earlier of, don't just put a case study on there to put a case study on there to fit a certain bucket. Only put case studies that actually are going to help you. So the reason I say that is if you have, three that are really research heavy and they're really strong and one design one, don't put a crappy design one on just to counteract the numbers. But I would, don't go full swing. I would do a mix, but again, dependent on, that number will be dependent rather, on kind of what you've been able to work on. But I do think having that mix will show you as a stronger candidate, in my opinion.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. And yeah, to add to that, I would say, Stefano, it's also, yeah, initially important to just like learn the whole process, right? And kind of, understand all of those different phases of the UX process. Because sometimes what happens is, let's say someone wants to be just a UX researcher and then they focus only on UX research. And the disadvantage of that strategy could be you could be limiting yourself to like very few roles and then competing with folks who may have PhDs or masters or etc. Right? So in some cases, in this case, for example, sometimes it makes sense to just be a journalist, right, and be open to many more different roles, especially now, like I've heard that and read about this, that's like one of the trends that's coming back a little bit with AI is more AI UX generalists, right? Because
Yeah.
right now with all these different tools, one person can be more productive and do more work in different phases, right? So you may see more of those UX unicorn roles as well. So yeah, we cannot predict the future exactly, but that's potentially what could be, what could happen. That's what I read, I think, what Jacob Nielsen was talking about.
Mm.
So Frankie, what I also wanted to ask you, anything else you want to add in terms of top things that make a UX portfolio effective that employers really like it and really want to kind of bring you for an interview?
That's such a hard one. Like, yeah, here's like the three things, or even one or whatever it is. Excuse me.
It's
Um,
just, yeah, whatever comes to mind, because I know you already covered quite a few things, right? So it's anything else that comes to mind.
I think the one that's like coming right to mind is making it look not template, not a template, I should say. Meaning that it looks, like you've created this from and that you've used your design skills to really highlight what you can do using your portfolio as a project, which goes back to one of the tips I was mentioning. But I think that, I'm thinking about ones that I've seen that looked really, really good was they were more so, they were different. They didn't feel like a template. They didn't feel basic. They actually felt like a real live website or a company product, which obviously all portfolios are a real live website, but I mean it in the sense that it feels more interactive. It feels more thought through than like a basic landing page. Um, that I think that's one of the big things is like, how do you really make, especially with, to your point, all the AI tools and everything that's now out there that's making everything a lot, quicker and easier, and you don't need engineers potentially in certain instances. Careful with what I say here. Um, but I think things like that, where you have all these tools at your fingertips, that I would recommend, like, why not play with them? Play with Framer, Lovable, Cursor. The list goes on and on. To just really see like how can you take it to the next level without though the goal without making it feel so templated and so over the top, if we go back to what I was talking about earlier.
Okay, okay. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, thank you, Frankie. And yeah, I want to briefly take this so Radhika's question, which is maybe not exactly just about portfolio, but I know it touches on, like, since we started bringing up AI tools and roles
Sorry.
definitions,
Try
etc.
not to.
But I want to take this question quickly, and then we can brainstorm a little bit. So Radhika is asking, is UX still in demand? And also how to prepare for interviews. Any tips?
Two totally different questions, but sure. Love it. Love the enthusiasm. I'm gonna start with the first one because I like that one. 1000% yes. I stand by that. I think that UX as an industry, I think is always going to be needed. I think that um, you know, we still all more and more companies, more and more industries are noticing the benefits of, I was supposed to say AI, benefits of UX. Confused me there. But I think so many more people are getting used to and recognizing the benefit of, you know, putting in the effort at the beginning so that you end up ultimately with a project that is more successful, not always, but more often than not, because you've put in that data, you've gotten, or you put in the effort to get the data. And so, yes, I definitely think it's still in demand. I also generally do believe that we still need humans doing it and not AI little robots. Um, I use AI all the time in my, a lot of my content and what I do, and I think it's a really helpful tool. But I personally don't think it's at a level of a lot of designers in the sense of the emotional aspect. I think, from my own opinion, I think it will get there at some point, but I don't think we're there yet. I think that we're in this kind of uphill excitement moment of everyone wants to use it. Everyone's like, oh, this cool tool. And it definitely is, don't get me wrong. But I think it's this moment of, okay, let's see how far we can push this. And I honestly think, give or take relatively soon, we're going to get to this plateau. This plateau of realizing where's the ethics behind all of this? How are we pulling the data into this? Is the data actually accurate? How many people are actually taking the data and running with it versus, looking and actually seeing the sources and where it's coming from? That I generally think that because of all those pieces, even more so, I think we're going to need individuals like ourselves to go in and say, okay, let me actually push back for the user. Let me, stand up and prove that the data is wrong, or the fact that we have certain skill sets that maybe the AI hasn't been programmed to yet. I think it gives us that upper hand in some situations to be able to actually be stronger than the AI because of the fact that we have more experience to some extent to lean on. We have different types of experiences to lean on. And I think that's really the benefit and the amazing part of still being needed and still being in like what our industry does at the end of the day. Um, I don't know. That's my little AI rant. Sorry. I said I wasn't going to bring it up and I can't not.
No, that's good. It's good. Yeah, I also wanted to just add to that, like based on our research, right? So AI is of course automating some of the tasks, right? Typically the ones that are more repetitive and kind of more easily systemizable, if that's a word. And but on the other hand, you see a lot of growth and difference and need for UX services because we have all these new different even AI-based products, right? And then different interfaces, right? So basically based on the predictions and based on research, yes, some of the work that you're doing, again, the probably less interesting work, right? It will be more automated, right? But you'll work with AI, with the AI tools, right? But the amount of work that is needed, the demand for the actual services is growing a ton, right? Based on the research, at least, that we conducted, and based on what Jacob Nielsen has been writing as well. So he has, like, if you're interested in a topic, like lots of awesome blog posts about the whole like UX plus AI and future topics. Yeah, so it's interesting. It's an interesting time, and even if you look, because even in the program, right, we weren't even looking specifically for AI products, but they kind of just find us themselves, because right now all the clients, all the client organizations, they start to like implement these different AI tools, and it's important, right? It's basically just use it as a tool and leverage it, right? And you'll have a chance in the future to improve all these different AI products, right? Because right now a lot of them still are not that great and very user friendly for a lot of people, right? So there's a lot of work to be done. So yeah,
I
so
think,
that's yeah,
can I have one more piece of that
yeah,
topic?
yeah.
I think there's actually two other pieces. Sorry. Two other things to this is one, I think there's also this, huge online presence of, AI is taking over the world, AI is here, blah, 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 etc. If we really pull it back and realize that is such a small portion of the population that has that opinion. There's actually a very small number, and I don't have the stats fully, but I'm like from what I've been reading and whatnot, there's actually a pretty small number of people who are fully embedded with the AI world. A lot more are not. And this connects to the second point of a lot of enterprise companies, for legal reasons, have not brought AI into their companies yet. They're still skeptical, they're still kind of afraid, or they're using only internal ones. And so I think that's another reason to say, hey, look, like, yes, your startups, maybe your smaller companies might be more embedded in with or embedding AI into their processes. But I think there's so many larger companies and organizations that still, for I personally think a while, are not going to be as, you know, excited and like eager to bring it in. So I think that's another reason why UX is still in demand by all of us, because of the fact that there's still going to be a bunch of jobs that are needing people, not AIs.
All right, awesome. So it doesn't matter what the topic is, AI always creeps in. It's
Always,
like any topic you do an event on, it's like, 'cause that's the hot topic right now, right? So it's
you know,
um,
inevitable, but hopefully they're good insights that are helpful. And I feel like it all connects back to our main topic, though.
all right, so let's take another question. So, and Haley, you might need to clarify. Maybe Frank will understand it better than I do. But so Haley is asking, should I put my Vibe coding project, it's live, in parentheses, to my portfolio? Is this relevant to my UX skills? So does that make sense to you, Frank? Because I'm not sure what exactly is Vibe
I
coding.
followed. Um, I'll give it a try. But I think it goes back to I apologize. I forget whose question it was earlier, talking about kind of a project that wasn't a challenge, wasn't really, didn't have much to it. And I think it's somewhat similar to some extent.
Well,
Where
Sabrina it was.
Sabrina, thank you. Um, I think Gailey, your question is slightly similar in terms of my answer, in the sense that it all comes down to what are the skills that it's showcasing. Is it something that you think is going to highlight something that's important for you on the job, or even on the job search to like make you stand out? I think that there's a few ways of looking at it in terms of, you know, was it a project that is related to an industry or a company you really want to work for? If so, that could be a great way to say, hey, I did this on my own time. I was vibe coding, just a project, but it at least gave me insights into the space. So that's a good way to, maybe connect the dots. Um, Another example could be, again, connecting the dots between the different skill sets of the individuals you're working with, aka the mindset of UX and engineering, which is a whole other topic. I feel like I always bring up, and it's two connected portfolios in the UX industry and everything. But I think that's another way of, if you're talking about understanding kind of that language and that mindset, that could also be a great UX skill that you're, highlighting. So I feel like I'm not fully answering, but I think it's so hard to say without really knowing the full gist of the project. But I would say is like, try and think about what it highlights for you. And like, what if someone was to look at that, what could be, 3 or 4 takeaways as to things that might help you on your search. Hopefully that helps answer the question.
Awesome. Yeah, much better than I would be able to answer.
For good and for bad, vibe coding is all over LinkedIn these days. So it's a constant topic.
All right. So I want to ask you specifically about case studies. Do you want to maybe come up with a few more potential mistakes that you've seen specifically with regards to case studies that maybe we haven't covered yet?
Sure. So a big one that I see all the time is not thinking through the flow of the portfolio, but specifically around the case study. So, and what I mean by this is that a lot of times a big trend is, as you scroll, your navigation disappears. Um, Totally fine if that's what yours is. This is not a stab against you or anything like that. It's, it makes it clean, it's nice. But the piece to think about is, as you're scrolling down and as you get to the very bottom when you're at your footer, it basically means you don't have a nav. I forgot the word. You don't have a nav anymore. And so the reason I call this out is it leads to this kind of interesting dilemma in a weird way, where the only way really to get back to your next project is if you scroll all the way back to the top of the case study. In, real world, we're talking seconds. We're not talking a lot of time to actually scroll back up. Fine. But if we talk about, portfolio land, we don't have time. I keep talking about how hiring managers have, a couple seconds to really decide if they want to like take a deeper look. And so you don't have any time to give away. And so you want to find ways to think through like how can I actually help them through the flow and see more of my work without getting distracted and going to a different tab? How do they, not get distracted and go to the next one? So a thing that I think is really helpful to do is at the bottom, either in the footer or like right above it, depending how your site is set up. Um, Having a button at the bottom of it that will take you to your next project. This way, you're helping show them like you're thinking through the flow. So again, you're thinking through your UX processes. You're thinking through how do I want to get them to see my information? How am I helping them through it? So that when they get to the bottom of one, they don't have to think, they don't have to move. They just click one button and it loads for them. So that's a huge one, and I see that way too often. Um, you're nodding your head. I feel like you've seen this one as well, then.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's good. It's good. Makes sense. Yeah.
Another big one is, oh, this is big. Another big one that I see is if you have images, they end up being so big that they actually take up more space than one scroll. So thinking about it, that your view window is, yay big, your image is bigger than that. And so I don't personally think this is a good experience because it's making me have to scroll to see bits and pieces of the same image. Where realistically, most people's screens are a decent enough size that, making it even half the size is a good size. And so thinking about, again, that experience helping someone read through something, if they have to like scroll to see more data and more information and connect the dots themselves, it's not great. So I would say is like really try and make sure that one section of a deliverable or one image is within that one scroll window so you can see it all at once rather than getting like half and then half. I usually see this specifically in terms of if there's like an embedded Figma prototype. That's usually the main culprit where it's like gigantic and it takes up like two scrolls. And I'm like, this is unnecessary scrolling in space and load time. So that's another big one is just try and get everything within those nice windows so that it's more clean and easier to digest together.
Awesome. All right. So let me ask you one more question, and then I'll take a couple more from Q&A. And by the way, again, feel free to ask more questions, and love that Q&A is full of all these different questions. Ideally, please try to focus them on portfolios and case studies and whatever is related to that. Again, no question is stupid. If you have some burning question that you really want an answer to, definitely put it in Q&A and we'll try to get to it. So we talked about mistakes. Now let's kind of flip it the other way around maybe. And do you want to talk a little bit more in terms of what actually makes a great case study and like what makes it appealing to employers in your opinion?
Trying to come up with something that I haven't said.
I know we're trying to be very comprehensive here.
Because right off the bat, I want to say number one is storytelling, but that was one of my secrets, which I feel like if anyone knows me, that's not a secret these days, but it's not talked about enough. Um, but what is something that was like a big, green flag, if you will? Um, I don't know. I feel like a broken record, but I always look for storytelling for personal brands, not even just personal brand, but personality. I think those are two different things. Um, or the personal brand is the visual identity. And there can be that overlap. But I think that when it comes to personality, that comes in from, you know, the way that you write, the way your interactions might work, the way things like load or kind of move in, the animations, whatever they are. And I think that's like an additional piece as well that really, really kind of stands out. Like I've seen some portfolios where this was a while ago, so let's see if I can remember it. But like there was a few that I saw where it was like a full notebook. And it really didn't look like any other website I'd seen. And even years later, I'm like, wait, like I still kind of like I still remember it a little bit because it was so different and so intriguing because it was just so them. Um, or I've seen ones where people had like a play on their name and like use that into the illustrations. So again, kind of similar to personal brand, but it really went that extra level. And I think that just really made it more fun, more exciting, because I really, again, wasn't looking at a basic template. So I think that's the big thing is just try and be different, try and do something like if you have a fun idea, run with it. I've seen one where they were very into gaming, and so the entire portfolio felt like a video game.
Hmm.
Very unconventional, but again, it stuck in my mind. And so those are just a few things, but like really just try and stand out, try and be different. I think this is that time to shine.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great. Um, so I see Bianca. Welcome, Bianca, by the way. Good to see you back. Is asking if I have a really large case study, is it
Mm,
best to split it into two, or am I losing some of the storytelling aspect?
it really depends.
That's it. Okay, next question.
No, let me actually attempt this one. I'll help out. No, first off, it really does depend because again, it's really hard for me to tell without actually knowing the information. If by breaking it in half, you're really not gonna get to a conclusion and it's gonna feel like you just kind of ended, then yes, it will break that storytelling aspect for sure. But if you can do it in ways where you break it down maybe into features so that you're still getting to a final solution every single, mini case study, but they're much smaller. And so it's like maybe one small feature versus, getting to the end and it's like, oh, okay, to be continued, go to the next page. It's like, no, don't do that to me. Don't give me that cliffhanger. So I would say is like try to think through how can you create a full packaged case study with by still breaking it up, whether that's maybe based on different sprints. If you worked in sprints and you did it that way, maybe it's based on the feature, which kind of is connected. There's multiple ways of doing it, but I would say it's not a no, but it's not a yes. It's
Hmm.
really, it really, really does depend.
It sounds like it would also probably be more common if, let's say, if you have some type of job, right, and you work on a project for like a year or 2 years or something like that, right?
Hmm.
Then it probably definitely makes a lot of sense to like definitely break it up, right? So it's not just like one big thing, right?
Totally.
But
That's when I'd probably do features because I feel like at
yeah,
that point you've definitely shipped a bunch of different things.
yeah, yeah. But at least, yeah, based on what we have seen, right? It's Um, if it's one story, right? If it's one comprehensive end-to-end thing, then I wouldn't break it up, right? I would just like make sure it's like one nice flowing story because otherwise you can have like I don't know, don't remember the exact details, but let's say you have only a research case study and then only a UI case study, right?
Mhm.
And it's often a good idea, right, to actually have like one comprehensive flow, ideally working and collaborating with different teammates, different roles, etc., right? So that just typically looks stronger.
I would agree with that. So yeah, I would say it's like how really comes down to that package. How can you create that buttoned up, tie the nice bow on top of that, birthday present, so that you get the full thing.
All right. Frankie, here's what I also wanted to ask you. Why do you think it's important to have those? Like, I know I talked about it this a little bit, right? But why do you think it is important to have real client case studies in your portfolio, not just hypothetical student projects? And like, what's the difference?
Totally. No, that's a really good, very, very good question. I think there's a big difference. I think the big difference comes down to, and why it's important, but it comes down to the piece of in a passion project, meetup project, whatever you want to call it, boot camp project, whatever, ones that don't have a client attached to them end up usually being kind of in a vacuum. They don't have a lot of environmental factors that you will get with a real world client. Even if it's, a very informal client, you're still going to get more of that that benefit than if you're just creating something in a vacuum. Because if you're just doing a passion project, yes, you know, you can come up with some of the pieces around like timelines that are going to be more realistic or get some, stakeholder insights. So you can try and bring in some of that. But I think that having been in the space for long enough and worked on enough projects, you see a lot of mind shift changes. And so one day you could get one thing from a stakeholder, the next day it could change. And so if you're just going to do it in a vacuum, you're not going to see that. And so I think you get a more realistic idea of what working in the space is, so that when you do get in that role, you have more experience with it. Number one. Number two, I think you learn a lot more because you're working with all these external pieces. And so it just makes you stronger as a designer to, you know, explain your thought processes in a better way so that you're actually explaining them to someone else and not just yourself. It makes you stronger to work with engineers, like I mentioned before. So it gives you more skill sets. So I know I'm kind of saying similar things than you mentioned, but I agree with you. I think it's very important to at least get one of those on your portfolios for sure.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, actually, in this market, we started for a while. We have been recommended to have two, right? Because again, if you're transitioning into this field and you have all these other people, right, who have only hypothetical projects, or maybe one, because I know like some bootcamps they have like one real client at the end. But right now, you're even competing with some folks who are already maybe worked in the field a little bit, right? So you want to just like keep building yourself up and basically not wasting time just only applying and it's like waiting for the best, right? Because um, the other reason for um, real clients is obviously you also have that real experience, which obviously looks great on your resume and your
Totally.
LinkedIn, right? And for
Mhm.
some recruiters, right, they basically have this checklist and they're like check, check, check is the real experience, et cetera, right? So, and that makes a huge difference, right? If you have two resumes, one has no professional experience, another one has that professional experience, that's it, right? For many recruiters, that's when their decision is made, right? So it's um, that's why it's important too. And by the way, let's see, so Radhika said, thank you for answering the question, and Sabrina as well. So, and Radhika is asking, um, could you remind how could we connect again such an insightful meetup? So maybe Frankie later when you have a moment, if you have your LinkedIn handy, or maybe Mika if you have Frankie's LinkedIn, do you want to just put it in the chat? If that's okay.
Yeah, please go for it by all means. Would love to connect with all of you. I don't have it handy, but I can get it if need be.
All right. Let me also ask you this and then come back to Q&A tab here. In your opinion, Frankie, how helpful are internships and what are the advantages and disadvantages of those for getting case studies and projects for your portfolio? And who do they work best for?
Hold on, I'm busy putting in my LinkedIn.
Okay.
Texted me. You distracted me with me here.
I'll see. Mika beat you.
Oh, darn it. I tried. Thank you, Mika.
See, Mika is really good at this. She has all the links.
Thank you, thank you. Well, now you can double connect if that even exists. Click the link you want. Um, Internships, yes, I got distracted. So benefits of internships. I think it goes back to what we were kind of just saying is like getting any form of real world experience, I think is a benefit. Even if it is at the level of an internship, if you can get inside of that company door, I think there's a benefit to it. I think it's the same thing with these apprenticeships where if you're able to even get inside that company and learn from true employees, true companies, and really just try and get inside, I think that really does help. I think it really provides more realistic data, more realistic experience to that resume, like you were just saying. So I don't think I think they are a positive. I think they can help. I think it just really depends on what that individual is looking for at that moment.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's basically internships can be like hit or miss, right? It's great if you can get a great one. The
Yeah.
problem is they're like a smaller percentage of all the internships, right? And sometimes the competition is almost the same as for actual jobs.
Mhm.
Um, and it can, like, I've talked to some people, or like we had these consultations, right, that we ran, and some people had an internship, but they didn't really get a case study from it, right? Because often you would do this like narrow, really focused work and just one phase, and you don't really get a case study. So it still looks better for some experience on your LinkedIn and resume, right? But it might not get you a strong case study. So it's a hit or miss, right? Basically, if you can find a great one and if you can kind of try to ensure that you actually get a case study, right? So that could be helpful. And I've also noticed, obviously, that they typically are offered to college students or like students somewhere, right? Even though like people at all stages of their careers could potentially benefit. I mean, switching careers at any age or any stage, right, could still benefit. But it sometimes can be easier if you're in college, right? So it could be a good way, but honestly, I would recommend volunteering and pro bono more. Mm,
Sure. I was gonna say, I feel like that's where apprenticeships can also come in for individuals who, on age wise, are on, the older side of just graduating college. I feel like sometimes like that's where the apprenticeship can be a little easier, just based on the mindset of what they're looking for, because it's still individuals who are new in their careers, but they're not just like a right out of college. So again, depends on the instance, depends on the company, but that could also be a way in.
yeah, amazing. Yeah, and I always say it's basically if you do not have real client projects, then it's just the best thing you can do. If you want to do this completely on your own, is just volunteer or find a company, find some kind of startup, small business, ideal with some interesting impact product, ideally a tech product, right? Not just like information display type of site. Um, that you could help, right? And who you could help. And just follow those tips. And once you get the recording, you can rewatch those tips. And basically how we identify those, we just look through, analyze our program, right? And basically identify, like thought through like why things were working and identify all these different criteria, right? Digital product, team, mentor, structure, ensure the case study is going to be strong and comprehensive and good, etc. Right? There are a few others. And basically just if you follow that, you'll definitely have very strong case studies, right? So it's not always easy to do on your own. So if you want help, we're here. You can always apply and reach out. But you could always try to do something like that on your own as well. Um, all right. So another question from Ada or Aida. Let me know if I like what's the correct way to pronounce. So the question is, I'm adding a fun touch to my portfolio to reflect my personality, but I'm a bit worried it might make me seem less serious than I should be.
I like this one. That's this might be the toughest question actually. Just because there is a line for sure, and I think, there's always going to be a line between being professional and having fun with it, but still being professional but having fun with it, or being professional and then having too much fun, and then the middle line. Um, that I think it really comes down to what is your comfort level to some extent in terms of how comfortable are you being, goofy or whatever word you want to use in the office. I also think if that really is your personality and you want to be, you are more of a fun, kind of vibe, and you're, not your, super, super serious person, I think that also kind of helps weed individuals out as well on your job search. I think it will help kind of showcase who you are so that when you get into those interviews or that role, you're in a company that actually wants that, respects that, encourages that, so that for you, you actually have a better time because you're putting your full self out there and you're not trying to like force it so that you're in a bucket just to get a job. So it's hard to just be like, oh, it's too much, it's too little. Like it's so dependent. It's my theme answer, apparently. Um, but I think it could help if you really do want something that's kind of, if that is your personality, I say lean into it as long as you think it's still professional. Because I do think it could actually benefit you by like helping you in the long run, because it will weed, I think, those more serious companies out. I don't know. I am curious, Michael, your take on this one.
Yeah, it's I feel like it can be, you can compare this to effective marketing, right? So you want to have that persona, right? And you want to have your product or your offer, right, to attract certain type of persona, but you also want it to repel others, right? Or that are clearly not a fit, right? And I would not like overdo it in your portfolio, right? It's like don't go overboard, but do it a little bit, right? So you're not, again, getting into a place where you will not really kind of like that environment, right? So I think it's like doing a little bit of that is good, right? It just shows who you are and kind of helps you move in the right direction, hopefully. And because places that will be a better fit, they'll say like, oh, she's cool, and so it increases your chance of getting there. So it's a little more risk, feels like, but it's a little like niching down, right? But I feel like it's a good idea, probably.
I think it's all about like bringing your authentic self. I feel like that was like such a big thing, like maybe a couple years ago, but I feel like it's still valid where it's like being not afraid to be your full self and like obviously to the professional length, but being able to be comfortable in your own skin to bring that to where you're working. I know there's a lot of debate online kind of what that means and what that looks like, but I think it's all about just authenticity, which again, I think is so important right now.
Yeah, yeah. So Frankie, what I also wanted to ask you, why do you think, or do you think it is important to get a mentor when working on your case studies and your portfolio? Like, what's the potential benefits of having a mentor?
1000%. I think it's so important to get other people's eyes on your case studies or portfolio. Specifically individuals both in both categories. Individuals who might not know UX, um, think friends, family, whoever is just like next to you, your spouse, whatever it is, like anyone that may not be that close to the industry, because that way, if they can use it, if it's, they might not understand everything, they won't get into the weeds of it, but if they can have an easy time navigating around, um, then it will help individuals that, some, recruiters who may not know the industry that well. So you're helping with that persona. Then I would go to kind of your point of the mentors, the individuals who do know the space because they can give you insights into maybe, this isn't great. I don't recommend putting this here or moving this around or whatever it is, giving those, that actual feedback on it specific to the case study. Where for me right now, I'm giving tips and tricks and I'm talking about feedback, but it's hard without actually having that case study in front of me. Whereas if I have it in front of me, I could say, okay, move this here, do this, do that, and like be specific. And I think getting as many eyes on it as you can from like different mentors, individuals of different career levels, even, I think is super important because of the fact that depending on where you're interviewing, where you're applying, you're going to get people of all backgrounds. And so the goal being is like try and satisfy as many people as possible. You will not satisfy everyone. But get it to a point where the big, big bugs, big issues are fixed. But that you're, doing the ones that you're confident in that you want to do. Among the rest that are like the smaller bits that is up to you to kind of figure out. But yeah, 1000%. I showed mine when I was starting to so many people, just so I could, get as much data, much feedback as possible. It goes back to what I started talking about earlier, where treat your portfolio as a project. Just like you do usability testing, you show it to your users, do the same thing with your portfolio.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And to also add to that, basically one of the key reasons to get a mentor, right, to help you is just saving time, right? So because essentially when you're new to something, right, having kind of someone who guides you can save you months, in some case years even, right? So it may be like even let's say if it's a support or person or coach or mentor, etc., you may need to pay them, etc., right? But it can save you months or years of time, right? So and that means you could have this opportunity cost, right, of how many months faster you get to that job, right? And how many months of salary you actually make. And paying that mentor could be just a tiny fraction of that, right? So it's basically speed, right? If you want to get somewhere much faster and it's like 3, 4 times potentially, that can be a good idea, as long as they're knowledgeable and kind of know what they're doing, etc. So it's all right. So Bianca has another great question. By the way, keep those questions coming. I see more and more portfolio questions getting into Q&A tab. Amazing. So would love to see more. And I think Isha, so we already kind of answered your question earlier about being a specialist versus generalist, but let us know in the chat or Q&A if we haven't. I think there was a similar question and we already briefly talked about that. So Bianca's question is, do you prefer PDF case studies or portfolio site? Is it a necessity to have a portfolio website? PDF case study, PDF case study, PDFs can be tailored to the job role you're applying for, while portfolio sites are open to everyone and cannot be more target tailored. Yes.
No, yeah, good one. Both. Let me explain. So I think you need a live link for sure. Hands down, this day and age, you definitely need to have a live site for your portfolio and not just PDF. Whether just looking at job postings, I don't know any that don't require a link anymore. So number one, to get away with that, I mean, you have other ways of doing it, but I think because of that piece for sure, but also if you think about what our job is, we design digital products. That is, not actually, that's not fair to say. It's not all digital, but most of us tend to work in tech in the digital space. But my point being is that what our job is actually showcasing that we do is that we build a product. And so I think, again, going back to what I said earlier, is thinking about the portfolio as a project. And so if it's not a live site, it's not like a real website, then you're not really using that to your advantage. So that's why I do think it's important to be an actual site. But to the other side, Bianca, around the PDF, I think having a PDF of your case studies is also important. But I think there's the different use cases. I think to your point, the generalized portfolio, how did I forget that word? The generalized portfolio is should be live, should be there, fine. And that's going to be the one that's going to open to everyone, on your resume, on your LinkedIn, etc. The one that is the PDF is more structured around the actual interview process. So for me, in my opinion, the biggest difference there is that the PDF should be, maybe 1 to 2 case studies max, and they should be very in depth. Think about usually in an interview, you have about 30 to 40 minutes or so to walk someone through that case study. And so that is a very, very different use case than someone who's just a hiring manager going through your portfolio for 2 seconds. Time length alone, that's quite different. And so thinking about designing for both those instances, I think is important so that the case study on your website, your portfolio is more high level, still gives a lot of information, but it's more high level, whereas the actual PDF gets into the details, gets into a bunch of that data, so that you can fill that block of time to really showcase them what you did, or showcase to them what you did, and really kind of like sell yourself. So that to me is the difference, and why I think you actually do need both.
Yeah, great point. It's a great answer. Yeah, and then Bianca, yeah, it's the short answer. You probably will not get away with just one. You'll need both. Usually, at least when you start, like if you're an experienced UX professional, sometimes you might even get away without a portfolio. In some cases, if you know somebody somewhere, right? But when you're transitioning, when you're switching and looking for a first role, usually you need both. And yeah, Frankie answered this real well.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Let's see. So Zoe, so we're a little bit short on time, so we'll have to be wrapping up relatively quickly. But I do want to take a few more quick questions as well. So Zoe was asking, does recent work matter when applying to a new job, or old UX case studies could work as well?
I think it comes back to, as long as you're proud of the work and it showcases important skills, I don't think it personally matters when you did it. As long as it still feels relevant and timely, and you're able to, confidently talk about it. If someone was to have you interview and like have you walk through it, as long as it feels like you can tell that story and still bring up that data, I don't see why it matters if you did it 5 years ago or yesterday. I think it really goes to what we said earlier around the different other goals that you're trying to really showcase through those actual projects.
Yeah, it's basically, if you have great, strong case studies, they're still great. Sometimes, in some cases, some employers or recruiters, right, they may want to make more recent work to just like ensure. So it's helpful. Like if you could have both, of course, more recent is better. But if not, right, if you did it a while ago, it's still great. But sometimes it could be good to bridge that gap, right? So at least based on what we have seen, based on like lots of consultations that we ran and lots of people that we helped, right? So usually it's good to have something like it's still like your older work is still great, right? If it is great, if it is strong case studies, etc., right, it's still there, so it's still awesome, right? Probably it's not like 15 years ago, right? So it's
Oh yeah, within a window for sure. And I think the other side to it is also is, that idea of just constantly updating your portfolio. Take the word constantly with a grain of salt. As you start going in your career more and more, the constant becomes less and less, but still, consistently every few years or whatever it is, updating it so that it does still feel that relevant piece. But again, I feel like that's kind of a later step.
yeah, yeah, and it's usually it's good to just basically keep building yourself up all the time, right? And that sometimes that's the thing with recruiters, right? They love people who are currently employed, right? And if you have that gap, right, that may push some of them away, right? So you want to be ideally doing something, because that could be helpful. That could be basically get you more attention from recruiters and from hiring managers, etc. So it could be beneficial. Not make it or break it completely, but it could be beneficial. So that's just kind of to add to that. All right, so we're almost out of time. I do want to take some of the other questions. I think we've taken most of like purely portfolio focused questions. So we'll do like a rapid fire or what do you call them?
Yeah.
Lightning round. Well, there's one more quick portfolio question from Tabitha, and then we'll take other ones that are more about experience or just UX career transitions in general as well, but quickly. So Tabata was asking which type of case study is better to include in our portfolio. So I think we already addressed a lot of this, but let's see like what we can add. Which type of case study is better to include in our portfolio? A vertical or similar type that can be easily scrolled through or a full slide deck?
I got a simple answer, honestly. I never like just seeing a slide deck thrown into a case study. I think, like I was saying before, there's two different use cases for it, with similar stories, but I think they are different ones. And so I think in terms of going back to what I was saying before, where we really want to highlight our skills and what we actually do and what we would do for that client, that company. And so, if they're trying to build a digital website, you want to showcase that as well, and that you can do those skills, not just by like, here's my slide deck, put on a website. So I really would encourage you not to have, just the slide deck. You can have similar data. You can have similar visuals. Oh my God, words. It can be relatively, pulling from each other for sure and using same deliverables, but 1000%, I do think they need to be different.
All right. So another quick question from Radhika in our lightning round. How does freelancing work with UX? Is it better to do it with a team or can it be one person's task?
How do I answer this without saying it depends?
All right, next.
It's sort of, all I'll say is the one thing is it either works. It really just depends on what your comfort level is and your ability to find clients. Next.
Yeah, yeah. Usually you would just if you're freelance, if you're doing like pro bono work, right, or basically volunteer, etc., right, so you can put a team together, right, and that's much better, and that will create a more effective case study. If you're just so it depends. Again, I like to make this distinction, right? I read this article somewhere a long time ago. It was about a different topic, but it's closely related. Are you looking to earn or are you looking to learn?
I
Right?
like
So,
that.
so are you learning and building yourself up and making your product better, or are you making the money? Right? And usually you need to do one before you really can make the other, right? And the mistake is trying to do both at the same time, and it can be tough. Like it's possible, it's definitely possible, but it can be like 10 times harder, right? So if you're just getting any type of freelance work to just make some money, right? Doesn't matter, right? Just get there, right? If you're looking to craft this nice, beautiful, strong end-to-end case study, right, then it's better to have all these different pieces like a team and a nice comprehensive project and digital product and basically what I covered in the beginning. Yeah, but a company, like when a company would typically hire you, like it depends on the company size. You may become a part of the team, or you may, if it's a small company, it may just be like a one person who they hire, right? So it depends.
Telling you, it's the theme of the answers.
Yeah. All right. So Jada was asking, as someone early in my UX career, Jada, by the way, great to see you. Great to have you here. Welcome back. As someone early in my UX career with some experience, I've been framing myself as a UX consultant on my portfolio and LinkedIn. What are some practical ways to connect with startups and consistently market myself as a freelancer slash contract worker with strong skills in UX research? Let's see if we can answer this quickly.
Oh my God. I don't know. Let's see. So hold on, I'm rereading this question. So, uh, consultant on the portfolio. What are some practical ways to connect with startups and consistently market myself? Um, I don't know how to answer this quickly. Um, I would say that, I mean, a good way to do it is to, if they're not under NDAs, is to show like snippets of your projects. So it shows like the different clients that you've worked with or the different individuals or companies you've worked with, just to give kind of a glimpse into your abilities. Um, I think the other way about doing it is, God, I had it and it went out my head. I was trying to be so quick and I forgot what I was going to say.
All right, let's reduce the pressure.
Um, the other thing I was going to add was I don't know. Totally escapes me. I'm sorry,
Yeah,
Jada.
let me try to add to that a little bit. So first of all, Jada, I just wanted to clarify like why, right? Like why you want to do that specifically, right? Is it and also another thing, another point is a lot of companies like you don't always need to position yourself as a freelancer or contract worker, right? You just need to position yourself as a professional. And then a lot of companies, like if they want a full-time employee or if they want like a W-2 format or type, or if they want a consultant or a contractor, they will let you know, right? And they will basically hire you on that basis. In terms of startups, I would just use a similar approach, right? So it depends on your goals, right? So I would just use our like the book that I suggest, the 2 Hour Job Search approach that I again not affiliated with, but probably should be, right?
Mhm.
So if you just use that methodology and just reach out and constantly network with people and basically create your lamp list, read the book. It's basically like a list of your target companies. To find startups specifically, you may want to reach out to incubators, accelerators, associations, and basically founder groups, etc., and basically network more with them. But it all comes down to building those relationships and networking and trying to be around those people and connect, do informational interviews, etc. All right, so that's so I know we cannot. I mean, this question could easily be like a topic for a whole event, but hopefully this was helpful. Um,
But I got frazzled. I was like, okay, there's too much here. I don't know where to begin.
All right, a quick case study, another quick case study question from
Alrighty.
Rocio. As someone who has more graphic design experience, is there a way I can work it in with some of my UX design experience?
I think there's two ways to answer this. One is I personally am of the mindset that I actually think it's helpful to showcase your different disciplines, related ones per se. So but the kicker here is I don't want them on the same page because of the fact that we go back to our persona of a hiring manager. They don't have time. They're, overwhelmed looking at 10 things at once. Trying to make it as clear as possible for them. I think what's important is having it there if they want it, but not front and center. So either like having two different sections where like UX is first and then underneath is your graphic design work, or even a different page, a different tab, however your navigation is set up. So that's one way is putting it there, but like if they want it, they get it. If not, no issues. But it showcases more of your personality, more of what's unique, more about you. The other side of it is leverage it for your brand, leverage it for that, stylistic approach. I actually went to school for graphic design. I come from that background. And I think for me, I still leverage all of those pieces that I learned in college, honestly, from those classes around typography, color theory, all of those pieces on a way too often basis, maybe some would say. But I feel like I'm constantly thinking about those, especially when it came to my portfolio and actually the stylistic approach to it, because I had that ability to think through with the knowledge, rather than just be like, oh, let me just do a color I like. So I would say it's like use those skills from the visual standpoint, 1000%.
Yeah, yeah, those are that's a great answer and
Mm.
comprehensive and
Yeah.
yeah, I think just to quickly add to that, it's usually, I mean, graphic design is an awesome background to transition into UX from. It's usually a little bit faster, a little bit easier than others, but you still must have a strong UX portfolio. And as Frankie said, I would not mix it all up together. I mean, some people think they can just somehow get away with it, just like put it all together, okay, and maybe they won't tell the difference what is what, but it doesn't really work usually, based on our experience at least, right? So you do want to have strong UX portfolio, UX case studies, don't mix it up. They will see that your graphic design, you have graphic design background, which is awesome, all right, but you still need the clear UX stuff and don't try to confuse them. So that's pretty much similar points. All right, quickly, another question from Haley. How do I overcome the imposter syndrome when interviewing or applying for the job, which is an industry that I'm unfamiliar with?
Practice. And I feel like that's like so simple of an answer and like undermining imposter syndrome. I am not. Imposter syndrome is a huge topic. Just trying not to get into that rabbit hole. It's something that I think two things. One, remember that everyone goes through it at some point in their lives, or honestly, multiple points in their lives, that it's something that is not just only you facing and just juniors facing. Like as everyone progresses, they all face it. Number one. Number two is, you know, the more you practice, the more it like slightly goes away. I don't want to say it fully goes away because, like I said, it always can come back, and everyone's different. But I think just getting those projects, those experiences under your belt, and the more that you can do, the better of a chance you have to kind of, get through it, if you will. Number three, there's four pieces to this. Sorry, I have a lot to say about bodybuilding.
Lightning
Three,
round with four lightnings.
I'll be quick, I swear. Three is it's all about reframing it. So I won't go into the full thing, but reframing imposter syndrome to being around rather than the big fish in front of me who are intimidating and just there to, scare me, they reframe it so that it's medium fish who are there to help me, who are there to have gone through it before me, and I can go to them for help. I can go to them for questions. Personally, that was huge. Being able to know, okay, that slight mind shift actually is a game changer. And then lastly, the fourth bit oh, is around getting comfortable, speaking through your processes. So, not just actually doing the UX work, not just doing it and sharing it in design reviews, but as a LinkedIn influencer, LinkedIn content creator, whatever you want to call me, um, I think that's a huge benefit. I think being able to talk through your thought processes on LinkedIn or a platform like that, I think is so beneficial. Being able to respond to a post in a way that's very thoughtful and had taken time through it, to state your opinion, state what you think. I think that's another way to really gain the confidence that really I think is lacking when you have the imposter syndrome. I'll stop there. I promise.
Awesome. That was great. All right, last question, and I think you already addressed. So Urja, I know you asked this question, posted it a few minutes ago, so I'm not sure if you were here when we started, but I think we already covered quite a few things. But Frankie, if you feel like we haven't anything else you want to add, and Urja, later you could also watch the recording, and I'm sure you'll, if you weren't here at that time, and you'll definitely get lots of useful insights. What are the crucial parts of any case study that must be there in the portfolio? And how to make a 6-second impressive portfolio? Whatever
I
we
think,
haven't covered
yeah.
yet.
What haven't we covered? I would say is just making sure you have all the pieces of the story. So again, we spoke about the storytelling aspect a lot, but I think the other side of it is just making sure you have all those pieces to your project. So your role, what did you do? Specifically calling out you yourself and not your team, making that distinction clear. Calling out what you're solving for, what is the problem at play, making that very, very clear very quickly. Um, and then talking about the solution, which I'm for today's sake, including the research. but in the sense of then how did you actually solve it and what were you solving for? So those are the big pieces is what did you do? What were you solving for? And how did you solve it? If you have those three pieces, I think you're basically golden.
Awesome. All right. All right. Yeah, Nurja did mention, so I joined late. But yeah, no worries, Nurja. So yeah, you could um, re watch the recording later as well, and learn some, get some insights from there as well. So Frankie, any final tips? I know we're out of time. I think we addressed pretty much all the questions.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what I love. We don't always get to do that, but I try to
Love
like
it.
practice getting through it all the time, and love that. So any final tips or advice you'd like to give on this topic before we start telling people about our program?
I would say the last piece I'll add is your portfolio is never going to be perfect. And again, I don't say that to intimidate you, to offend or to offend anyone here. It's more so the fact that it's just not possible because you're constantly growing, constantly evolving, constantly like learning new pieces. And so I say this to mean that like get it to a point where you're comfortable, you're confident with it, so that you're able to apply with it, knowing that it's not static, it's going to change, knowing that you're going to continue to build off of it and, maybe completely change the entire thing again. But I'd say is just remember that like, it's not set in stone. It can change. Just get it to a point where you're satisfied that if someone from your dream role was going to see it, you'd be very happy. And be, excited that they, saw it at this moment in time. So that's the last piece I'll throw in there.
All right, awesome. So thank you so much, Frankie. This was awesome.
Mhm.
So I hope you guys enjoyed the event and got some great insights. So as promised, before we wrap up, people often ask about our program, and as promised earlier in the beginning, we're going to tell you a little bit about the program that we run, because it may be a great opportunity for some of you to not just build a very strong real clients portfolio and real work experience, but also get the crucial soft skills like team collaboration and UX setting, client management, and presentation, along with career prep to master UX job search and interviewing, so you can actually land that first UX role. So who this program is best for? The program is the best fit for ambitious people who know UX basics or come from a design, research, creative, tech, or related background and look to transition into UX in one of the most effective and efficient ways and without quitting their current jobs or other commitments. We're also pretty selective and look for motivated and committed team players because you would be working in a team with mentors and with a client, etc. So try to be kind of careful there. So we ran many cohorts so far, helped over 160 people or so transition into UX. Alumni of the program have been hired by lots of awesome companies like SiriusXM, Coach, Google, ABC News, Meta, JP Morgan, many, many others. The program was ranked by SwitchUp as the best UX program for a few years. And actually this year we got #1 again, which was awesome. And also got featured in Fortune magazine as well as ADP list. The advisors and mentors are also UX practitioners from top companies like Google, IDEO, American Express, The Economist, and quite a few others. What you gain after completing the program is build not just the hard skills, but the critical softer skills, real experience with a robust portfolio, expand your professional network, and master UX job search and interviewing so you can actually land a UX role. In fact, our grads have done so well that we offer a money-back guarantee. So you either land a UX job or you get your tuition back plus an extra $500 on top of that. So if it sounds like you may be a good candidate, you can learn more on beginnings.com. Our cohorts are quite small and fill up pretty quickly, so please act soon. The next cohort is starting. We don't have the exact date yet, but it's going to be starting in September. And because the cohorts are small, sometimes even if you're a great candidate, you may still end up on the wait list, right? So we did have that happen quite many times. Also, to thank everyone in our community who attended this event, you'll be eligible for a $500 tuition credit, if accepted, of course. To claim that credit, what you need to do is by tomorrow, just go to the website. You'll see the link in the chat. Mika will post that and request a free, no commitment career transition consultation where we'll do a first UX job hireability assessment for you. And by the way, these sessions are designed to not just be some quick program pitch, right? But are designed to, first of all, take a look at your background, your skills and experience, identify what is possible for you to do to become a highly hireable UX job candidate, uncover the key bottlenecks that are restricting your UX career transition progress, create a personalized action plan that will get you results, and also see if you may be a good fit for our UX Career Accelerator program. All right, so in addition to telling you about the program, wanted to briefly mention that we run different types of virtual events. So we'll keep you updated about the upcoming events and share resources via our newsletter that is usually sent every couple of weeks or so. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you to our wonderful guest for taking the time to join us and provide all the valuable insights. I know we're pretty comprehensive in things, so I really appreciate all your time, and it was a huge pleasure to have you here. And by the way, Frankie, anything else you want to share in terms of like best way for folks to connect with you or find you? Is it just LinkedIn? Anything else?
LinkedIn and Instagram. I'm on mute. I put both on my slide deck, so you may have saw both there. Trying to get back into Instagram, so it's UX by Frankie. Or my LinkedIn is just my name, Frankie Kastenbaum. So would love to connect with you on both or either one. But yeah, definitely will respond. So say hi.
All right, awesome. So thank you so much, Frankie, and thank you everyone for joining. We'll see you at the next event.
For having me.